In an earlier lecture, I observed that research processes are largely self-managed by researchers. In this lecture, I will show how self-management manifests itself through peer reviews in the publication process. The process that leads a submitted research paper to eventually be published and the decision to publish a paper are entirely in the hands of peer researchers. Peer review is, first of all, an essential filter that avoids dissemination of poor research outputs. This filter is essential to avoid flooding the research community with inaccurate, wrong, or irrelevant material and reducing noise. Peer review is also essential to guide improvement of submitted material prior to its diffusion and has the goal to improve its potential impact. Peers are recognized experts who voluntarily accept to act as reviewers. They are active researchers who work voluntarily. Their experience, knowledge, and integrity is freely invested in the process. Reviewing papers should be considered by any researcher as an obligation to contribute to the health of the research community. Although reviewers spend time and effort in reviewing, they must realize that they also benefit from reviews, both directly and indirectly. Filtering is the main indirect benefit. Support in improving own work when submitted for publication is the main indirect benefit. A self-managed community requires that its members spend part of their time and put their best energies into supporting the community. Let us now look closer to how peer reviewing fits into the publication process of journal papers. What I say here holds with possible variations for most scientific journals. A journal has an editorial board headed by an editor-in-chief, which is responsible for the scientific strategy and integrity of the journal. When a paper is submitted for publication, the editor-in-chief assigns it to a member of the editorial board who is then responsible for further processing. The editor selects possible reviewers who report to him or her. Editors and reviewers are the main actors of the peer review that sustains scientific publication. Normally, the members of the editorial board are internationally known and respected researchers with a broad experience in the subject area of the journal. Being nominated on the editorial board of a prestigious journal is considered by researchers as a sign of recognition. Reviewers are selected among the best experts in the topic of the paper and must be aware of the quality standards adopted by the journal. Very often, they are previous contributors to the journal. When they accept to review a paper, they should be able to spend time to produce a detailed and well-motivated assessment. Most important, to ensure fairness of the peer review process, all involved peer reviewers, editor in charge of the paper, and reviewers should have no conflict of interest with the authors and should apply fair, unbiased, and constructive judgment. Let us now look at the mechanics of the editorial process by referring to this workflow. Before selecting the reviewers, the editor checks for appropriateness of the submission, and as a result may desk reject it, for example as out of scope. Otherwise, they search for appropriate reviewers. The search may require several iterations until a proper number of reviewers who agree to review the paper is found, normally 3. The reviewers also agree on the deadline for submitting their evaluations, although reality shows that often these are not respected. Reviewers' reports are expected to provide a detailed dissection of the paper with constructive suggestions to the authors on how to improve it. They are also expected to provide a recommendation, which may be accept for publication, reject, or, most likely, revise for further review. Based on the reports and the recommendations of the individual reviewers, the editor, often together with the editor-in-chief, makes a final decision. In the case of revision, a paper undergoes a second round of review, followed by a final decision. Let us now consider peer-reviewed conferences. The structure and process I will describe here apply with small variations to most existing cases. A conference has a program committee which is responsible for the technical program. The committee is chaired by one or more program co-chairs. Members of the program committee are responsible for reviewing the paper. Each paper is reviewed normally by 3 members, and there is a hard deadline within which all reviews must be collected. The decision about the papers to accept for presentation at the conference is collectively made in a meeting by all members of the program committee. The meeting may be done in presence or electronically. This simple structure works for small conferences, since it hardly scales to large conferences which may attract hundreds of submissions. Larger conferences may be organized in tracks according to subtopics and have separate subcommittees per track. Or they may be structured hierarchically in terms of a large program committee whose members act as reviewers and a smaller size program board which collectively decides about acceptance based on the reviews. The principles of fair reviewing and avoiding conflict of interest apply for conferences as well. Conferences take a binary decision about submissions, accept, reject, because they cannot accommodate revision processes. They have a fixed decision date. An interesting and controversial point concerns anonymity in the peer review process. Reviewers are normally undisclosed to authors. This is to allow reviewers to be frank in expressing their opinions, avoiding potential intimidation. Consider, for example, the case of a young researcher who reviews a paper from a well-known senior researcher who may be later involved in decisions regarding his promotion. The young researcher might feel uncomfortable in making a negative decision about the paper. A counter-argument to anonymity of reviewers is that it may shield unfair behaviors. The authors may also be undisclosed to reviewers by double-blind review processes. The goal here is to prevent a reviewer's decision based on the authors instead of the contents. To allow double-blind review, the authors must remove from the paper any possible information that might lead to revealing their identity. This may be awkward, especially when referring to previous work. More recently, a completely different approach has emerged called open peer review. In this process, the names of peer reviewers of papers submitted to a journal or a conference are disclosed to the authors. The entire pre-publication process of the article is posted in a public repository. Not only the signed reviews, but also the history or revisions of the paper and author responses to the reviewers. This makes the review process a kind of open and social process.